we're going to take a slightly different look at the comparison between Form 1120H and 1120 that is normally presented. The normal presentation is this one right here, which shows that, hey, you pay $4,000 in tax on Form 1120H, you only pay $2,000 in tax on Form 1120. That's the difference between a 30% tax rate and a 15% tax rate. Smart move, right? Well, not necessarily. Not if you've got any problems in what you've done. And all these problems occur long before you ever file a tax return. The most common accusation by the IRS is that you didn't follow the proper procedures for making an election under Revenue Ruling 70-604, and they're going to disallow that election. And all of a sudden, all that income you thought you were going to roll over to the next year gets taxed this year. And instead of a tax savings of $2,000, you have an extra tax bill of over $5,000. And it's too late to file Form 1120H. You're already stuck. You're going to pay some extra tax. But what if it gets worse? What if the IRS says, you know what, you didn't follow the 6 steps that are required under Code Section 118 for qualifying your reserve assessments as capital assessments, and therefore we're going to drag them in as current year income, and all of a sudden you're going to pay an extra $99,000 of taxes. But if the IRS has done that, it's a certainty that they are going to then assert inappropriate tax accounting under Code Section 481. And then you've got some disastrous results, because now your attempt to save $2,000 has just cost you $314,000 of additional taxes. How can that be? Code Section 481 is a tool whereby the IRS says you had inappropriate tax accounting. In other words, your set-aside of capital reserve assessments was not appropriate. We're going to go back for all the years open under the statute of limitations and pick up your beginning reserve balance at that date and all of the assessments that have occurred since then, which in this case happens to be $628,000. And guess what? That gets taxed at the highest tax rate of 34%. This is a real nasty one, and you've got to realize I have seen this asserted on virtually every IRS audit on Form 1120 that I've ever worked on, and that's about 40 of them. In this slide here, what we're doing is correlating the risk analysis that we've talked about on the previous slides here to where this risk comes from. If you look at the bottom of this slide, this is your Form 1120 checklist. And what we're looking at here is, where does the tax risk come from? The biggest tax risk comes from not separating your non-capital reserve accounts from your capital reserve accounts. It's combining painting, contingency, and tree trimming money in with your capital reserves for roofing, fencing, and paving. You know what? Once you've done that, you have a real difficult time trying to convince the IRS that you don't owe them $314,000. Form 1120 really has a lot of tax risk with it. Most people don't consider this. Most people aren't even aware of it. But it is the most important factor you've got to consider if you're filing Form 1120. And that's really the reason why we recommend Form 1120H for most associations. Most associations simply will not exert the effort to do everything they've got to do to safely file Form 1120. So when you think about which tax return you're going to file, don't forget to think about the risk on Form 1120.